Welcome to the fourth discussion of the School Improvement Council. This discussion will help you explain why students are not currently reaching your school's academic achievement goals. My name is Sue Reynolds, and I am president of the American Student Achievement Institute. During today's video, we will do two things. First, we will review several different items: the school improvement organizational structure, the improvement process, and your school's achievement goals that you established at your last meeting. And then today, we'll also look at root causes. We'll do an introduction to root causes. We'll set up the council discussion. We'll also talk about external expectations that people outside of your school, like the Indiana Department of Education, have for your school in terms of root causes. And then we'll end up with talking about your next steps. Again, these videos are very informal. We'll just put up a slide and kind of talk about it. So we'll begin with a review and with a review of the organizational structure. So remember, your school's organizational structure has three components. One of those components is the steering team, and they serve as the improvement process managers. They're not the decision makers, they're just the managers or the worker bees behind school improvement in your building. Then there's the student body. The members of the student body include the entire student body, so every single student in the school, and their job is to discuss school improvement, different topics as you go through this process, and to provide input. So we'll get input from the students every step of the way. And then finally, the third component of the organizational structure is you, the School Improvement Council. And the School Improvement Council are the decision makers. The members of the council include both school people and community folks. And their task is to discuss school improvement and then different topics in school improvement, and then reach consensus on different aspects of the school improvement plan. So we do want to remind you that these online discussions are going to take some time. You'll need time to prep before you enter into the discussions. And those prep activities will include things like reviewing products from previous discussions, watching a video prompt for the current discussion so you have the background that you need before you can enter into that discussion. And then also time to complete a task. This month we're going to ask you to review data again. Next month we're going to ask you to do some online research so that you can bring the results of those tasks into the discussion. We're anticipating that the time that you'll need for each of these discussions to both prep for them and then to get involved in the discussion will be about 2 hours per discussion. So just wanted to touch on that to make sure that you're allowing enough time to prep for the discussion before you actually engage in the discussion. Okay, so let's review the improvement process. We started in September. Your school set up your organizational structure and started to collect data. Then in November, the council met for the first time as an online discussion, and we looked at an introduction to the vision to action process. Then in December, you started the process and created your first product, which was a vision statement. Your vision statement talked about the ideal students, the ideal adult practices, and then your ideal student achievement data. And then we also looked at what were your core convictions that led you to have those ideals. Then in January last month, we said, okay, let's come back to reality now. We're no longer talking about the ideals, but realistically, given where we are now, where do we want our achievement data to be 1 year from now or at the end of next school year? So your school now has set some very broad goals for school improvement, and then underneath each of those broad goals, you set very specific data targets. We're using the terms priority areas of improvement for the broad goals and SMART goals for the very specific goals. Those terms align with terminology that the Indiana Department of Education is using. Then this month, we want to work to explain why aren't students reaching those goals already? What's getting in the way of them reaching those SMART goals? So this month we're going to again look at lots of different kinds of data that will help you determine why students aren't already reaching your goals. So we'll look at curriculum, instruction, extra help, expectations, student guidance. We're going to look at a lot of different areas in your school and your community to help you figure out specifically what's getting in the way. Once we know what's getting in the way, then we can look at proper interventions. So when we put in interventions next month, we want to design interventions that aren't just based on a hunch or based on what's fun to do or what the school down the road is doing, but we want interventions that are going to be specifically aligned with those root causes. So this month it's really important that we identify the proper root causes so that next month we can figure out what to do about it. Then next month will be the last discussion of your council, and then after that the school improvement team along with the teachers and the educators in the building will start to prepare to implement these school improvement plans. So they'll design professional development, set up an annual calendar, secure the resources that they need. They'll be starting to work the plan. So, okay, so that's the process, and again we have two products now that have come out of the process. One is the vision statement, and now we have achievement goals, and then today's product will be the root causes. Okay, when you look at your achievement goals report, which we're going to do in a minute, I just wanted to kind of give you a tour of the report. What you're going to see is your school's one or two broad goals, the priority areas for improvement, and the broad goal title will be discussed like this. And this one says student proficiency, pass rate, and then specifically what we're looking at in this broad goal is math in 7th grade for students in the bottom 25%. Then underneath that broad goal, you're going to see those very specific SMART goals. And this is really where we're going to focus all of our energy, is driving these SMART goals. So it's very important that you understand how to read these SMART goals in the reports. So let's just look down in the chart here. So this is a SMART goal specifically for 7th graders. And then the next question is, well, which 7th graders? Is it all 7th graders? Is it just Hispanic 7th graders? Is it just free and reduced 7th graders? And in this case, we're looking at all students. So we're not narrowing the demographics. This is all 7th graders. If we had wanted to look at just Hispanic 7th graders, then this would say Hispanic. But in this case, we're looking at all 7th graders. The next part in the table is the benchmark, and this is what we want those 7th graders to do. So we want them to master ratios or the ratio standard on I-STEP. So now we know what we want to have happen and who we want to do it. Then the completion date, when do we want this to happen by, and then the data. So you've got 3 years of actual data, possibly 4 years of actual data if you've already given this assessment in the current school year. And then you've set up the target, where you want to be by the end of next school year, and then the vision. So you can see for this school, in terms of the percentage of all 7th graders who mastered the racial standard in I-STEP, our current data over the past several years has been 54%, 53, 55. We don't know yet where it is for this year, but our target for the end of next school year is to jump that up, in this case 10%. So the more specific your goal, the easier it is to get a fairly large jump. If this were a broad goal, realistically we'd probably be looking at a jump of 2%, 3%, but the more specific this SMART goal gets, then that allows us to really hit the interventions more specifically, and we'll see bigger jumps in that specific goal. So any rate, so this is how to read that data. This is what the data means, and then in the title of the SMART goal, we'll always give you the benchmark first, and then the grade level, and then the demographics within that grade level. So this is the student, this in parentheses, this describes the student group, and then this describes what we want them to do. Okay, so that's how to read the achievement data report. And then what we'd like to do, what we'd like to do is to have you pause right now, and then in the pre-discussion tasks where it says review your school's SMART goals, you're going to click that. That'll bring up the achievement goals report, and then just look at and remind yourself what the SMART goals are. It's very important that you remember those SMART goals, because when we go into the root causes, those root causes will be attached to a SMART goal. Okay, so let's pause the video now and look at that report, kind of study it a little bit, and then come back. Okay, welcome back. You have reviewed your school's SMART goals, so you know where your school is headed. And now let's look at root causes. And again, the root causes are things that get in the way of achievement. Root causes answer the question, why aren't more students reaching the benchmark in our goals? So this is the explanation. Why aren't kids already doing this? So root causes, some root causes are general in that they impact all subjects, all courses, all standards. For example, if your school had poor attendance, that's going to impact everything across the board. It's going to impact language arts, it's going to impact science, math. So that would be a broad or a general root cause. Lack of student discipline in a school is going to impact everything. Teachers lacking engaging instructional practices across the board, that's going to impact all courses if it's all teachers. And then if there's things like kids don't have academic help outside of school hours, that's something as well that would impact all courses, not just one course or one standard or whatever. So you may have several SMART goals, and these general areas of concern or these general root causes are going to impact all of your SMART goals. So the one thing we want to then have in your thinking is that some of your root causes may be general in nature. Other root causes may be very specific, and the specific root causes impact a specific subject, a specific course, a specific standard. It's something that's specific to one SMART goal. So an example might be something like this. Lessons on ratios are absent in the 7th grade math curriculum. So if that's the case, that's not going to impact language arts, but it's certainly going to impact math. And it's certainly going to impact any SMART goal that you had around the ratio standard. So another specific root cause may be 7th grade math instruction practices don't engage all students. So we've looked at instructional practices, and in every other area of the school, the kids are engaged, but in the math instruction, we don't have engaging instruction. So that would then be specific to math classes. Extra help does not exist for 7th grade math. It may exist in other places in the building, but not for math. Students do not choose to ask questions in math class. That is a specific issue that's only impacting math. So we have both general root causes that impact everything, and then specific root causes that impact just that one SMART goal. Okay. The other thing to think about is that root causes, we would like them to always be supported by data. And this is something that we often find missing in school improvement, that people have a hunch that maybe this is happening, but they haven't backed that hunch up with data. You may have a hunch, and when you look at the data, your hunch may be correct, but it may also be not correct. So here are some data points that would back up some root causes. So let's say you have a hunch that poor attendance is impacting achievement in all of your classes, all of your courses, all of your grade levels. So the data point might be that 7% of students are absent more than 10 times during the year according to school records. So there's data to back that hunch up. Lack of student discipline. 40% of the students are referred to the office for disciplinary purposes each year according to school records. Student engagement. 67% of students report on the instructional practices, that instructional practices are not engaging on the SI2 survey. 30% 37% of all students report that they do not complete their homework almost every day on the SI2 survey. So there's lots of different places that we can get data from to support the root causes. And in our process, we're going to start with the data, because there may also be some root causes that never occurred to you. But when you look at the data, it's like, oh my gosh, if that's the situation, then we've got a root cause there that we weren't even thinking about. We need to nail that one. So so we're going to start out by looking at the data to find those root causes. Okay, this slide is really, really important. Schools that improve tend to carefully identify both general and specific root causes for each SMART goal. Over the 20 years of doing this, we've been able to look at what do our schools that earn our Top Gainer Award have in common. And this is one of the key things, that they really have dug into the root cause data. They know exactly why the students are not achieving, and then they target those with their interventions. A lot of times schools don't do this step. They make mistakes on this step by not focusing both on general and specific. A lot of schools just look at general, and that is not enough to do it. We need to look at, in a general way, what's getting in the way of achievement, but then also specific to this SMART goal, this course, this standard, what's getting in the way of that, and then really address that. So, this is very important this month, that we're spending some quality time looking at what's getting in the way. And then next month we'll implement interventions to address those things. Okay, very important that you understand how strongly you need to be looking carefully at these root causes this month. Okay. So what we're going to be doing is looking at data, and really I always think of this as like we're an investigator looking at the data, and we're trying to figure out why aren't students achieving at a higher level. So think of yourself as an investigator as you dig into this data. You're like Sherlock Holmes trying to figure out the answer to a question. Okay, so you're going to be looking at 7 different data reports. These align with our organization's Elements of High Achieving Schools. So we're going to look at expectations, we're going to look at how rigorous is your curriculum, we're going to look at instruction, specifically student engagement, classroom assessment, and there specifically are teachers using classroom assessments to inform their decisions about instructional practices and to identify students that need extra help. And then the 5th report is going to be about extra help. Do you offer it? Do students participate? And then 6, student guidance. We believe that student guidance is critically important for increasing student motivation. And so we'll look at the guidance aspect, and also for helping kids make good choices that support high achievement. And then in number 7, the learning environment, and that would include things like parent involvement, also discipline, so just the environment. Okay, so you're going to look at 7 different reports, and then within each of those reports, this is the content you're going to see. There will be the answers to several survey questions, and the survey question responses are going to come from students, from teachers in the building, parents in the community. So you'll be looking at data from survey responses from at least 95% of the students in your building, 100% or 95, close to 100% of your teachers, at least 30 parents, and at least 30 community members. And then in addition to the survey responses, you're also going to see in each report some short answers that were entered by your steering team about practices in the school. So you'll have those 7 reports, and then here's the content of those 7 reports. So here's what a report might look like. This is a question about expectations from the expectations report, and it's data about whether or not students expect to continue their education after high school. And one of the things we wanted you to see is that this survey appears on on all four types of surveys. So the student survey said, I expect to continue my education after high school. And then the parent survey says something like, I expect my child to continue his or her. Community says, I expect almost all students in the school to continue their education. Teacher, I expect almost all my students to continue their education. So here's the data. The responses that were available were agree, disagree, and not sure. And then here's the student data, parent data, community, and teachers. And the other thing we want to make sure that you see is that in addition to giving you the percentage, we've given you the raw data. And that's really important because, 83% of 2 students, or I guess it wouldn't be 83% of 2, or 83% of 11 students is going to, maybe you would look at differently than 83% of 846 students. So we always give you the raw data so you can put the percentage into perspective. Okay, so what we'd like you to do now is pretend that this was data for your school, and you're pawing through the data and you're investigating, you're looking for things that maybe are interfering with learning in your school. Is there anything in this data that would concern you? Okay, let's pause right now, look at this data real quickly, and when you've had a chance to do that, come back. Okay, welcome back. So as you were looking at this data, you might have seen that in terms of expecting to continue their education after high school, 83% of the students said they agreed with that. 100% of the 45 parents agreed with that. 62% of the community believed in that, and 61% of the teachers. And for some folks, there would be some things that were concerning in this data. For example, if only 61% of the teachers expect the students to continue their education after high school, are those that don't expect almost all students to continue their education, are they going to be apt to provide the educational opportunities, the extra help, the academic rigor that kids need in order to continue their education after high school? And if we look at the numbers in this school, there's 22 teachers that couldn't agree with that statement, that I expect almost all my students to continue their education after high school. And if the expectation isn't there, the likelihood then that they're providing all kids with the things that they need to continue their education after high school isn't happening. That's not happening. So same thing with the community members. If the community is not expecting almost all students to continue their education after high school, are they putting the things in place that their young people need in order to get to post-secondary and succeed in post-secondary? Scholarships or encouragement, or just conveying their expectations would be huge. So this is the kind of thing that we're looking for as you paw into the data. We're really looking for where are those data points that might make us think that there's something getting in the way. Okay, so I just wanted to give you kind of a look at what the short answer questions might be that the steering team has filled out. So like, what percentage of your 9th graders are enrolled in Core 40 curriculum at the beginning of the freshman year? 97%, and then you can see how this falls off, 94%, and senior year 87%. So this may be a concern, that the percentage of students enrolled in the Core 40 curriculum decrease over time as students go through high school. And then if that's one of your concerns, then your interventions would address that. So okay, so we have both survey questions and short answer questions, and now let's really talk about the discussion, what you're going to be doing today. So we've created a help sheet that would enable you to kind of take notes as you're going through these data reports. So the help sheet, what we'd like to do is to go ahead and print it right now and then come back real quickly and we'll talk about it. So let's pause, print the report, and then come back. Okay, welcome back. You have printed the root cause review help sheet, and now let's talk about the data and what you're going to be doing as you review the data. Okay, so the second part of prepping for this discussion is to review each of the force field reports. Here's another one. I expect to continue my education after high school. We kind of already have talked about what that looks like, and you know you've got data for the 4 different types of populations. Here's another one, instruction report. My teachers keep my attention when they are teaching. And then you've got, you know, the different responses. Interesting on this one, 85% of the teachers said that that was true. Only 63% of the students said that that was true. So, you know, for me, if I were in this school, that would just beg a conversation. How come the teachers think they're engaging, but the students think they're not engaging? Another thing I thought was interesting about this data point is that 61% of the parents weren't sure if their children's teachers were engaging. This would make me wonder how much kids were talking to their parents about what was happening in the classroom. You know, we often talk about, you know, we often say parents should talk to their kids about school, but my guess is a lot of times they're talking about, you know, athletics or what happened at lunch, or, you know, they're not, you know, specifically talking about, you know, what's happening in your language arts class. So, at any rate, just that's a, you know, that's a pretty high percentage, that over half of the parents don't know if the teachers in the school are engaging. And then also there's even a smaller percentage, there's also a large percentage of community members that aren't sure. And, you know, sometimes for each of these questions, you know, you have to kind of ask yourself, is it important that the community understands this? If it's not important, then I wouldn't worry about the 44%. But if it's a question where you do think it's important for the community to, you know, have an understanding of what's happening in the school, that would help raise achievement, then you'd want to be concerned that such a high percentage of community members weren't sure. So, okay. Here's a curriculum report, just a sample. You can see that we've got the survey questions at the top, and then the short answer questions at the bottom. What percentage of your math classes are aligned with state standards? So that, again, will give everyone kind of a sense of the rigor level of your curriculum. Okay, so the root cause reports are found there in the pre-discussion tasks. So you can see the 7 reports there, and just click on each report and they'll pop up, and then you can paw through the data. Then here's how to use that help sheet that you just printed. First of all, when you find something that you think may be a root cause, you can just write it at the top in that top section. Then your own school's SMART goals will appear here. So the first one will always say general, and then we'll list each of the SMART goals that your school listed last month into the system. So what you want to do is look at this low attendance and then say, okay, which of these SMART goals would low attendance impact? And probably the light bulb would go off and you'd say, well, all of them. So if that's the case, oops, I jumped ahead of myself. If that's the case, just put an X across from general, because this impacted all of the SMART goals. And then in this bottom part, we want to write the data, the evidence that this was low attendance, that low attendance might have been an issue. So 13% absent more than 10 days from, and your data source was school records. Okay, let's look at another one. No Algebra 1 extra help is the root cause. And then the evidence, teachers report no extra help opportunities for Algebra 1. And then which SMART goals will that impact? Well, it's not going to be all, because that's not going to, you know, impact a language arts SMART goal at all, but it would definitely impact the percentage of all 11th and 12th graders passing Algebra 1, who have passed Algebra 1 by the end of 11th grade. Okay, so that's how to use the help sheet. We think if you use that to take notes on as you're pawing through the data, it'll make the discussion a lot easier for you. Okay, so let's pause the video now, and let's take probably a considerable amount of time to look at each of those 7 reports and just be searching for root causes. If you need to print extra help sheets, you can, you know, go back and do that if there's not enough columns for you. Okay, so let's pause now and then we'll come back. Okay, welcome back. I know that taking the time to review 7 different root cause reports, that is a time-consuming thing. So on behalf of your school improvement steering team and really on behalf of your students, thank you for doing that. I know that that is quite a task. So, okay. So now now you're ready to answer the root cause discussion questions, and just wanted to go over the questions with you. First of all, the first question is, what general areas are interfering with all of your school SMART goals? So you would just write down the SMART goals, the general SMART goals that you found. And then, what is interfering with students' ability to reaching the specific SMART goal below? And then we've written in the specific goal. So this question is really asking, what's getting in the way of free and reduced 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders' ability to pass I-STEP English Language Arts? So this is specific, and then from your help sheet you can take all the things that were checked off as impacting this goal, this SMART goal, you could write as this response. And then the next question, the prompt's going to be the same thing, what is interfering with students' ability to reach the specific SMART goal below, but now this is a different SMART goal. So this is all students in grades 1 through 5 who earn a 90% on a monthly reading vocab quiz. So that's what the discussion questions are going to look like. So what we'd like to do now is to take some time to answer those discussion questions. I do want to very much encourage you that after you're finished answering the last question to come back to this video, because there's some important things that we want to talk about in terms of external expectations in this step. Okay, let's pause now and answer the questions. Okay, welcome back. Now, we want to talk about what the steering team is going to be doing now that after the discussion is complete. So the first thing they're going to do is your steering team will read all of the discussion that the council put into the discussion questions. They also will look at some drilled down reports that we have available that will help them understand, are these root causes for all students or just some students? So we're specifically looking at, are there some student groups that are more impacted by the root cause? So maybe one general root cause is attendance, but when we start looking at the drill downs, it's attendance for boys is more of an issue, and maybe even Hispanic boys' attendance is more of an issue. If we can nail down the student group, then we can even more fine-tune the interventions to address the root cause. So we're asking your steering team to look at the drill down reports once those root causes are identified to see who is being impacted more by that root cause. So the drill down reports that they'll be looking at is grade levels. We want to see, is this a root cause that's across all grades or just 1 or 2? Is it impact boys or girls more? Does it impact a specific race or ethnicity at a higher level? Does it impact low-income kids who we've identified as students qualifying for free and reduced lunch? Does it impact low-income more? 21st century scholars, which is an Indiana state initiative where the students have self-identified as scholars, kids wanting to go on to post-secondary and meeting an eligibility requirement. What about special ed kids? What about kids whose parents have been to college versus kids whose parents have never, even for one day, been to a college campus? One of the ones I like to look at is typical report card grades. Does this impact kids who report that they get lower grades on the report card than kids who get better grades on the report card? And I think you'll see huge swings there in root causes and how they impact kids. And then your steering team has the ability to create a student group. So they could go in and say, we want to look at Hispanic boys in 3rd grade. How is this impacting them? So we can really drill down by creating your own student group. Now, we're asking your steering team to do that, but it occurred to us that maybe some of you would like to do that as well. For example, if you're on your School Improvement Council representing the Hispanic community, you may want to look to see at the Hispanic data for the Hispanic students. If you're a third grade parent on your council, you may want to look at the third grade data. So while we're not requiring the council to look at the drill down reports, we'd like to give you the option to do that. And I think that would be extremely interesting. I would just pick one or more of those groups that you find interesting, and just look to see if you can start to see differences between white kids and Hispanic kids, or boys and girls, or paid lunch kids versus free and reduced lunch kids. Because if you can further narrow down that student group, it allows you to customize your interventions later so that they will reach the students in that group that is having the most issues with that root cause. Okay, so we do want to make sure that you understand you've got that option, and we want to encourage you, if you'd like to look at even more data to help to figure out what's going on in your school. Okay, and then we also want you to understand that while you have some thoughts about what's getting in the way of achievement in your school now, that people outside of your school also have ideas about what's getting in the way of achievement in your school, and in some cases they are requiring you to address the things that they think are interfering with achievement at your school. For example, the Indiana General Assembly passed Public Law 221, and in Public Law 221 it specifically addresses attendance as an issue and cultural competency as an issue. And it asks schools to specifically look at those two things and determine if they are interfering with achievement at your school. And if so, then you're required to put those in as root causes. So your steering team will be looking at that, and they may decide, to be compliant with Public Law 221, we have to address those things. So even if it didn't come up in the discussion at all, your school's going to have to put that in. Okay, then the Department of Ed has also identified schools that have been low achieving over a long period of time as priority schools. And after having several chances to improve, over many years to improve, the state, if they have identified a school as being a priority school, then the state's going to come in and say, okay, these are the things you have to work on. So schools that are the lowest achieving over multiple years have been identified as priority schools, and they are required to address each of these 8 things in their school improvement plan. So to do that, your leadership team will need to make sure that these 8 things are linked to the root causes that you've come up with as a school. If, for example, in your discussion of the root causes, nothing was ever mentioned about instruction, your steering team is going to still need to list root causes, instruction. Something about instruction is one of your root causes in order to be compliant with DOE's expectations. Then the same thing with focus schools. Focus schools are also relatively low achieving schools, but not as much of an issue as the priority schools. So if your school has been identified by the state as being a focus school, then we need to make sure that at least one of the root causes aligns with at least one of the turnaround principles. So your steering team will need to make sure that that happens. Then another external expectation is coming from the U.S. Department of Ed if your school has accepted funding as a Title I school-wide school. So Title I school-wide schools are expected to address these 5 things that the U.S. government feels that all title schools need to do. So they need to have highly qualified teachers, they need to have a roster of highly qualified teachers, they need to have an evaluation of parent involvement evaluation of parent involvement activities, they need to have program alignment or a consolidation statement, and they also need to have a statement about consolidation of funds. So you can see that some of those involve just having a statement or report. Others have to deal with practices, hiring qualified teachers, highly qualified teachers, and then also having a parent evaluation. So your steering team is going to need to make sure that at least one of your root causes, that there's at least one root cause that addresses each of those 5 things if you're Title I school-wide. Okay, so those are the external expectations. The other thing we'd like your school improvement team to look at is the current school improvement plan. And if in that current plan you have any achievement goals that are going to carry forward to next year, we'd like you to consider whether or not the root causes that are associated with those achievement goals should also carry forward. And again, remember in 2014 we did a terminology change. Prior to then, these things were called areas of concern. Now they're called root causes. Okay, and then finally the steering team will create the root cause report draft, and the report will look something like this. There will be a SMART goal listed, and then there will be the root causes underneath that SMART goal. And the expectation then is that your school will address those root causes. And if they successfully address the root cause, then we should see the data within that SMART goal start to go up. Okay, so once they have that report draft finished, then they'll send it out to you for your consideration, and we're working now to reach consensus among your council. Remember, to reach consensus as an individual, you don't have to love all of the root causes, but you do need to be able to support them publicly and live with them, so that if there's a root cause that you just can't live with, it just bothers you and you cannot live with it, you need to let the steering team know. And if you think about each of those root causes and there's not one that you could support publicly, if you were talking to someone in your place of worship or the grocery store or at your service club meeting, you know, if you couldn't support those root causes publicly, then you'll need to let your steering team know. Because we really do need, especially in this step, to have everybody on board in what the issues are behind you're not being able currently to reach your achievement goals. So, okay, so if you need to talk with someone in the steering team, remember the council consensus point person on the steering team is the person that's working with you on this. That would be the same person that sent you the draft. So just, you know, go back to them with your comments if you have any issues. Again, remember, you don't have to love the root causes. You just need to be able to live with them and support them publicly. Okay, that finishes up our video for this month on root causes. So please be sure to contact the council discussion point person on your local school improvement team if you have any questions about the process or about this video. So thanks very much. We wish you lots of luck as you do the next step in the Vision Action process. And we just, again, thank you so much for putting in the time to help your school improve student achievement for the kids in your community.